My brother chose a football game over my wedding, so I returned the favor and made sure he wasn't part of my life milestones again. I'm a 28-year-old guy named Mark, and earlier this year, I got married to the love of my life after dating for 5 years. My wife and I had spent months meticulously planning every detail of the wedding to make it as special as possible, not just for us, but especially for everyone attending. We announced the date a full year in advance, giving our families and friends plenty of notice. We didn't want anyone to have a reason to miss it. When I told my family about the wedding date, I made it clear how much it meant to me that everyone show up, especially my younger brother Lucas, who's 26. We've had a rocky relationship in recent years, but I still wanted him to be a part of the wedding. Lucas seemed indifferent during the announcement. He nodded and mumbled something like, "Sure, sounds good." When I asked him to be a groomsman, he agreed without much enthusiasm. Lucas and I used to be close when we were kids, but things changed as we got older. The biggest issue was the blatant favoritism from our dad. Growing up, it was always obvious that Lucas was Dad's favorite. Dad would cover for him, praise him endlessly, and make excuses for him when he messed up. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the one expected to keep everything in line. It created a wedge between us that never fully healed. To make things worse, Lucas has this obsession with football, and when I say obsession, I mean it. He lives and breathes football, specifically for one team. His entire social calendar revolves around their games. He's the type of fan who won't even attend family gatherings if there's a match on, and he once skipped our mom's birthday dinner to go to a tailgate. About 6 months before the wedding, Lucas casually mentioned that the date coincided with a huge game for his team. He didn't even seem bothered by it, laughing as he said he'd figure something out. At the time, I didn't think too much of it. I figured he'd prioritize the wedding since he had known about the date for so long. As the weeks went by, Lucas started missing key moments leading up to the wedding. He skipped the suit fittings, claiming he was swamped with work. He bailed on a planning meeting, saying he had football stuff to handle. I was annoyed but decided not to press him too hard. My fiancée had paired Lucas with her best friend as part of the wedding party, and they were excited about the pairing. I wanted everything to go smoothly. Fast forward to the wedding day. I woke up that morning feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. Everything was set, the venue looked amazing, the weather was perfect, and our friends and family were ready to celebrate with us. But then, just a few hours before the ceremony, I got a text from Lucas. It was short and vague. He said he couldn't make it and apologized for the inconvenience. That was it. No explanation, no phone call, nothing. At first, I thought something serious must have happened. Maybe he got sick or had an emergency. But as I was standing there trying to process his message, one of the groomsmen showed me Lucas's Instagram story. He was tailgating at the football game. There he was, decked out in team gear, holding a beer, and laughing with his friends. The day went on, and I tried not to let his absence ruin it, but it was hard. My wife was furious but told me to focus on the people who did show up. During the reception, people kept asking where Lucas was, and I had to come up with excuses. I said he wasn't feeling well, but I could tell people didn't buy it. My dad, of course, made excuses for Lucas. He insisted there must be a good reason for his absence. Even when I showed him the Instagram story, he brushed it off, saying maybe the tickets were expensive, and he didn't want to waste them. He acted like missing my wedding wasn't a big deal. The whole situation cast a shadow over what should have been the happiest day of my life. The next day, I texted Lucas to confront him. I asked him how he could ditch my wedding for a football game. His response, he said the game was a once-in-a-lifetime experience and acted like I was overreacting. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about the wedding. It was about years of favoritism, dismissiveness, and a complete lack of accountability. Lucas didn't care about anyone but himself, and my dad enabled that behavior at every turn. This was the breaking point for me. I realized I couldn't keep letting him or my dad take advantage of me anymore. But little did I know, this was only the beginning of the drama that would unfold in the weeks to come. After the wedding, I stopped talking to Lucas entirely. No calls, no texts, no acknowledgement. It wasn't a conscious decision at first. I just didn't have anything left to say to him. Every time I thought about how he ditched my wedding for a football game, it made my blood boil. Of course, my dad couldn't leave it alone. Less than a week after the wedding, he called me to lecture about moving on. He said holding grudges wasn't healthy and accused me of blowing the whole situation out of proportion. According to him, Lucas probably had a good reason, and I needed to be the bigger person. When I brought up the Instagram story and how Lucas clearly chose tailgating over being at my wedding, my dad brushed it off. He said, "It's not like you needed him there to get married." That conversation ended quickly. Things escalated when Lucas decided to defend himself in the family group chat. He casually dropped a message, saying he was sorry if anyone felt hurt by his absence, but claimed it wasn't fair for me to expect him to miss something he'd been looking forward to for months. He acted like I'd sprung the wedding date on him last minute, conveniently ignoring the fact that he'd known about it for a year. The group chat exploded. Some relatives chimed in to back me up, saying Lucas's actions were selfish and disrespectful. Others stayed quiet, probably not wanting to get involved. A couple of cousins, who are also football fans, tried to excuse Lucas's behavior, saying the game was a big deal and he must have felt torn. My mom, meanwhile, reached out privately. She admitted she was upset with Lucas too, but didn't want to take sides. She said she understood why I was hurt, but hoped I wouldn't let this ruin the family. It felt like another attempt to sweep everything under the rug, and it didn't sit right with me. Then Lucas sent me a direct message. It wasn't much of an apology, more like a justification. He said he was sorry things turned out the way they did, but insisted I was being too rigid by expecting him to miss the game. He claimed he didn't mean to hurt me and that I was overreacting by ignoring him. It was so dismissive, it felt like he was doubling down on his decision. My friends, on the other hand, were furious when I told them what happened. They couldn't believe it. A few of them even unfollowed Lucas on social media after seeing his post from the game. One of my groomsmen flat out called Lucas's actions disgusting and said I was better off cutting ties with him entirely. That's when my wife suggested I post the story on Reddit. She's an avid Redditor and thought it might help to get an outside perspective. I was hesitant at first, but eventually I wrote up a post for Am I the Asshole, explaining everything that had happened. The response was overwhelming. Within hours, the post blew up. Thousands of people commented, most of them siding with me and calling Lucas out for being selfish. Some users even shared similar stories about family members prioritizing trivial things over important events. The validation was nice, but what I didn't expect was for the post to go viral. Extended family members saw it, and that's when things really got messy. A few aunts and uncles called Lucas out directly, asking him how he could do something so selfish. One of them even messaged my mom, saying she needed to get Lucas in line. Lucas found out about the Reddit post and was livid. He accused me of airing family business and said I was being childish for dragging him online. My dad wasn't any happier. He called me again, this time angrier than before. He said I'd caused unnecessary drama and claimed Lucas was being unfairly attacked. He kept pushing the narrative that I should have let it go and that I'd made things worse by involving strangers on the internet. The family started to split into factions. My dad and a few football-loving cousins sided with Lucas, arguing that it was just one day. On the other hand, aunts, uncles, and even some of my mom's side of the family were firmly in my corner. They couldn't believe Lucas had prioritized a game over his brother's wedding and thought Dad's excuses for him were enabling. Throughout all this, my wife stood by me. She reminded me that this wasn't just about the wedding, it was about years of favoritism and disrespect. She encouraged me to stay firm and focus on what was best for us. The whole ordeal dredged up old memories of how my dad had always favored Lucas. It wasn't just the wedding. It was a lifetime of being overlooked and expected to compromise. This time, I decided I wasn't going to let it slide. I told Lucas that if he wanted to fix things, he needed to apologize. Really apologize, no justifications, no blaming me for being too rigid. Until then, I didn't see the point in talking to him. That's when my dad dropped the bombshell. He said if I didn't forgive Lucas and let this go, he'd cut me off financially. For context, he had been helping my wife and me with some expenses while we saved for a house. He made it clear that the support would stop if I didn't make peace with Lucas. And that's where things stand now. I have no intention of backing down, but I have no idea what's coming next. Not long after my dad's ultimatum, he followed through on his threat. He stopped helping my wife and me financially, cutting off the support he had been providing as we saved for a house. It wasn't devastating. We'd been working hard to build a safety net, but it definitely made things tighter. Dad didn't even give me a heads up. One day, the usual transfer didn't come through, and when I called to ask, he said, "I told you what would happen." Meanwhile, Lucas continued living his life as if nothing had happened. He was still posting photos from the football game, tagging them with captions like, "Best day ever," and "Once in a lifetime." It was hard to ignore, especially since mutual friends and family were liking and commenting on them. What made it worse was that my coworkers somehow found the Reddit post. I walked into work one morning to find a couple of them chuckling over something on their phones. When I asked what was going on, they hesitated but eventually admitted they'd seen the story. Apparently, one of them is a regular on Am I the Asshole and recognized the details. They didn't outright mock me, but the questions were uncomfortable. Is your brother really that obsessed with football? So he just didn't show up to your wedding? Wild. I could tell they were holding back from saying more. It was embarrassing, to say the least, and I regretted not being more careful with identifying details in the post. At the same time, my mom was trying to play peacemaker. She called me and asked if I could just apologize to Lucas to calm things down. I couldn't believe she was asking that after everything that had happened, but she seemed more concerned about keeping the family together than about holding Lucas accountable. If there was one silver lining, it was how much this whole ordeal brought my wife and me closer. We spent evenings talking about our plans for the future, how we wanted to create a life that wasn't tangled up in family drama. She reminded me that we had each other and didn't need my dad's financial support to build the life we wanted. At her suggestion, I started therapy. I had been carrying years of resentment toward Lucas and my dad, and I needed help unpacking it all. The therapist helped me see how the favoritism had shaped my relationships and decisions. It wasn't a quick fix, but it felt good to start addressing it. Back on Reddit, things took an interesting turn. A few eagle-eyed users started digging through Lucas's public social media posts. They found old tweets and Instagram captions that painted a clear picture of his priorities. Everything revolved around football and his own convenience. One post even joked about how he'd skipped out on some cousin's wedding because it clashed with the game. It wasn't hard for people to connect the dots. As Thanksgiving approached, my mom reached out again, urging me to attend the family dinner. She assured me it would be a chance to move forward, but when I asked if Lucas was going to be there, she hesitated. That was all I needed to know. I told her I wasn't coming if he was there. When word got back to my dad, he was furious. He called me ungrateful and accused me of tearing the family apart. He went on about how I needed to appreciate family no matter what, completely ignoring the fact that Lucas had shown zero appreciation for me or my wedding. A few days later, Lucas dropped a new excuse for missing the wedding. This time, he claimed he had been dealing with mental health issues and that the game was his way of coping. It felt like another attempt to dodge responsibility, and it only made me angrier. Thankfully, extended family members weren't buying it either. Aunts and uncles who had initially stayed out of the drama started reaching out to me directly. They expressed their support and even admitted they'd been frustrated with Lucas for years. Some of them began pressuring him to apologize, which, unsurprisingly, didn't go over well with Lucas or my dad. Around this time, I received an anonymous letter in the mail. It was typed out, so I couldn't recognize the handwriting, but it was clear someone in the family had written it. The letter expressed support for me and my decision to stand firm, saying I wasn't alone and that many people were on my side. My gut told me it was from one of my in-laws, but I couldn't be sure. Then, out of the blue, Lucas sent me a private message. It wasn't an apology. Instead, it was a snarky comment about how I was being dramatic and dragging this out for attention. He accused me of ruining the family dynamic over something he considered trivial. That was the final straw for me. I decided to cut off all communication with Lucas. No more texts, no more group chats. I was done. I told my mom and dad that I wouldn't be engaging with him anymore and that my decision was final. Just when I thought things couldn't get more ridiculous, Lucas made an announcement on social media. He had proposed to his girlfriend, and she said yes. In the post, he casually mentioned that he hoped I would be his best man. I couldn't believe it. After everything he'd done, he still thought I'd stand by his side at his wedding. That's where things are now, and I have no idea what to expect next. A few days after Lucas announced his engagement, I got a text from him asking me to be his best man. He framed it as an opportunity to start fresh and said it would mean a lot to him if I stood by his side on his big day. It was almost laughable. He couldn't even show up to my wedding, but now he wanted me to make a big gesture for his. I didn't dance around the issue. I told him no. I explained that there were too many unresolved issues between us, and until he took responsibility for his actions, I couldn't pretend everything was fine. Predictably, he didn't take it well. It wasn't long before my dad was on my case again. He called me selfish, accusing me of holding a grudge and refusing to support family. He said I was making Lucas's wedding harder than it needed to be and needed to grow up. I reminded him that Lucas had made no effort to fix things after missing my wedding, and that this wasn't about holding grudges, it was about accountability. Dad didn't want to hear it. Things spiraled quickly. Lucas's fiancée, who I'd met only a handful of times, posted a long message on Instagram about how weddings are about family and forgiveness, and how sad it was that some people can't let go of the past. While she didn't name me directly, it was obvious who she was talking about. The comments were split, with some people offering sympathy and others suggesting she stay out of it. The post made its way to extended family, and before I knew it, the cousins were arguing. Some took my side, saying Lucas had no right to expect my support after what he'd done. Others defended Lucas, claiming I was being petty and dragging out the drama. It felt like the family was more divided than ever. Mom called me that evening, clearly upset. She said she was tired of all the fighting and wished Dad would stop enabling Lucas. For the first time, she admitted that she'd been ignoring how unfair Dad's favoritism was, and that it wasn't helping anyone. She said she supported my decision but hoped I wouldn't let this permanently ruin my relationship with Lucas. Therapy helped me see things more clearly. My therapist pointed out that I'd spent my whole life being conditioned to prioritize family over my own well-being, even when it hurt me. This situation wasn't just about Lucas, it was about breaking that cycle and setting boundaries. As the engagement planning went on, Lucas leaned into the drama. He told relatives he was under so much stress because I refused to be there for him. He even suggested that my refusal was making his fiancée second-guess the wedding. It didn't take long for her to message me directly. She reached out on social media, asking me to reconsider being Lucas's best man. She said she didn't want to start their marriage with family tension, and that Lucas was really struggling with everything going on. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure if she genuinely cared or was just trying to smooth things over for the wedding. Then Dad called with another ultimatum. He said I needed to attend Lucas's wedding and put this behind me, or I'd face permanent estrangement. He claimed the family wouldn't tolerate my stubbornness anymore. I told him I wasn't going to be guilt-tripped. This wasn't about stubbornness. It was about respecting myself enough not to let Lucas and Dad walk all over me. Lucas must have seen the post because, a few hours later, he went on a rant on social media, accusing me of trying to ruin his wedding. He called me petty, immature, and jealous, claiming I was using this as an excuse to get back at him for missing my wedding. The comments were a mix of support and criticism, with some people pointing out that Lucas had brought this on himself. Eventually, the family decided to call a meeting to address the growing tension. I didn't want to go, but Mom convinced me it might be a chance to clear the air. The meeting was a disaster from the start. Dad started by defending Lucas, insisting he'd made a mistake, but was trying to make amends. Lucas, on the other hand, doubled down, accusing me of being vindictive and refusing to let go of the past. When I brought up his actions and how they'd affected me, he brushed it off, saying, "It's not that deep." That's when his fiancée spoke up. She said she couldn't stay quiet anymore and admitted she'd been having doubts about the wedding. Then she dropped a bombshell. Lucas had been lying to her about money. He'd been secretly gambling, including dipping into their wedding fund. The room went silent. Lucas tried to deny it, but she pulled out screenshots of betting transactions. She said she'd been covering for him because she thought he'd stop, but it had only gotten worse. She was clearly upset and said she wasn't sure she could go through with the wedding anymore. The meeting ended in chaos, with Lucas storming out and Dad chasing after him. Mom stayed behind, shaking her head and muttering about how everything had gone too far. That's where things stand now. I have no idea what's going to happen, but it feels like everything is finally coming to a head. Not long after the disaster of the first family meeting, Lucas's fiancée reached out to me privately. She seemed hesitant but told me she needed to talk about something important. I wasn't sure what to expect, but her confession shocked me. She revealed that Lucas had almost called off their engagement a few months earlier. Apparently, she had been pushing for a small, intimate wedding to save money, while Lucas was insistent on having a lavish, over-the-top event. When she wouldn't budge, he'd threatened to break things off, saying he deserved a dream wedding after everything he'd been through. She admitted that his selfishness had been a red flag, but she had convinced herself it was just stress and agreed to compromise. She went on to say that the recent drama had opened her eyes to how self-centered Lucas really was. Between his behavior toward me and the gambling revelations, she was starting to doubt if she wanted to marry him at all. She told me she regretted asking me to be his best man and understood now why I had refused. Meanwhile, Lucas was busy planning what could only be described as a football-themed spectacle. Word got out that he was incorporating his favorite team into nearly every aspect of the wedding. From the invitations to the cake, everything was designed around football. He had even arranged for VIP tickets to a game as wedding favors for the guests. The extravagance didn't sit well with the extended family, especially after they found out Lucas had been gambling away part of the wedding fund. A few relatives started questioning my dad directly, asking why Lucas had never been held accountable for anything. Not missing my wedding, not his gambling, not his entitlement. Mom, who had always been careful to avoid rocking the boat, finally reached her breaking point. She openly told Lucas he was wrong for how he had treated me and that he needed to apologize. This was a huge shift for her, and it sent ripples through the family. Of course, Dad doubled down. He accused me of turning Mom and the rest of the family against Lucas. He refused to acknowledge Lucas's mistakes, and instead blamed me for stirring the pot. Lucas's fiancée contacted me again a few days later. She was visibly upset and said she was seriously considering calling off the wedding. She admitted she felt trapped. She had already invested so much time and energy into the relationship, but the gambling and the constant drama were becoming too much. She asked for my honest advice, and while I didn't want to tell her what to do, I made it clear that she deserved better than what Lucas was putting her through. At this point, I decided to turn to Reddit again. I shared the latest developments and created a poll asking for advice on how to support Lucas's fiancée. Should I encourage her to leave, stay neutral, or offer more support? The responses were overwhelming, with most people urging me to be honest with her and not sugarcoat my thoughts. The post quickly went viral again, and somehow Lucas found out about it. He exploded. He accused me of sabotaging his life and trying to ruin his relationship. He claimed I was obsessed with tearing him down and demanded I take the post down. I didn't. Dad's reaction was even worse. He called me and said if I didn't apologize to Lucas for humiliating him, he would never speak to me again. At this point, I was done with the threats and ultimatums. I told him I wasn't going to apologize for standing up for myself, especially when Lucas had done nothing to fix the damage he'd caused. The tension reached a boiling point when another family meeting was called. This time, Lucas's fiancée attended, and she came prepared. As soon as the conversation started veering into the usual excuses for Lucas's behavior, she interrupted. She laid everything out on the table: how Lucas had been hiding his gambling, how he had threatened to call off the engagement over wedding details, and how he refused to take responsibility for anything. She said she was tired of covering for him and didn't know if she could go through with the wedding anymore. Then she dropped the real bombshell. She revealed that Lucas had been gambling away more than just the wedding fund. He had also racked up credit card debt and had been lying about it for months. She had only discovered the full extent of it recently, and it was far worse than she had initially thought. The room erupted. Lucas tried to deny it, but she had screenshots of his transactions to back her up. Mom looked horrified. Dad looked furious, but not at Lucas. He turned on me instead, accusing me of creating a toxic environment that pushed Lucas into making bad decisions. The meeting ended in chaos. Lucas stormed out again, and his fiancée left shortly after, saying she needed time to think about what to do next. For now, the family is in complete disarray. Lucas hasn't contacted me since, and his fiancée seems to be rethinking the entire wedding. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it feels like everything is finally coming to a head. The fallout from the second family meeting was swift. Lucas's fiancée officially called off the wedding just days after her revelation about his gambling. She sent a message to the extended family, explaining her decision and making it clear that Lucas's hidden debts and refusal to change left her with no choice. She thanked everyone who had supported her and apologized for the drama. The family's reaction was immediate and divided. Some were shocked, while others admitted they'd seen it coming. My dad, of course, downplayed the entire thing, calling it just a bump in the road. He tried to paint Lucas as a victim of stress and bad luck, brushing off his gambling as something everyone dabbles in occasionally. But this time, Mom wasn't having it. She confronted Dad in front of everyone, saying his constant excuses for Lucas's behavior had only made things worse. She pointed out how his favoritism had hurt the family for years, enabling Lucas to avoid responsibility. It was the first time I'd ever seen her stand up to him like that, and it was clear she meant every word. Meanwhile, Lucas continued to deny the accusations at first, claiming his fiancée had exaggerated the situation. But when she provided screenshots of his betting transactions and credit card statements, he couldn't keep up the lie. He eventually admitted to the gambling problem but still tried to downplay its severity, saying he'd figured out a plan to pay off his debts. His fiancée didn't stick around to see if he followed through. She packed her things, left his apartment, and moved in with a friend. Before she left, she reached out to me one last time to thank me. She said that if it hadn't been for my refusal to sweep things under the rug, she might not have seen the full picture until it was too late. Dad, predictably, blamed me for ruining Lucas's life. He claimed that if I had just kept family business in the family, none of this would have happened. He went on about how Lucas was under so much pressure and didn't need me piling on. It was the same song and dance, but this time, more family members were calling him out. Mom, in particular, had had enough. She told Dad that if he didn't stop defending Lucas and start supporting the rest of the family, she would leave him. She said she was tired of being caught in the middle and watching him prioritize one son at the expense of everyone else. Lucas, for his part, finally reached out to me directly. He was frantic, claiming he'd lost everything: his fiancée, his savings, and now the support of the family. He begged me to forgive him, saying he needed my help to get back on his feet. I told him that forgiveness wasn't possible without accountability and genuine change. I made it clear that I wasn't going to enable him the way Dad had. If he wanted to fix things, he needed to take responsibility for his actions and get professional help. The extended family began distancing themselves from Lucas and even started cutting ties with Dad. Aunts and uncles who had been on the fence before were now openly siding with me, saying Lucas needed tough love, not more excuses. Some of them even reached out to check on me, apologizing for not stepping in sooner. Therapy became an even bigger part of my life as I worked through the years of resentment and hurt. I realized how much I'd let family expectations dictate my decisions. Letting go of that weight was liberating. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living for myself instead of trying to meet someone else's standards. Dad, on the other hand, became increasingly isolated. With Mom and the extended family rallying around me, he lost the support system he'd relied on to justify his behavior. He still tried to defend Lucas, but fewer and fewer people were willing to listen. As for Lucas, he eventually entered a gambling recovery program. While it's a step in the right direction, he still hasn't taken full accountability for the damage he caused. He continues to blame outside factors for his problems, and hasn't made any real effort to rebuild trust with the family. My wife and I have been focusing on building the life we want, free from the drama. We recently celebrated our first wedding anniversary, surrounded by friends and family who truly care about us. It was a reminder that you can choose your family, and that it's okay to let go of toxic relationships. Looking back, I'm grateful for everything this experience taught me. It wasn't easy, but it showed me the importance of setting boundaries and standing up for myself. Life is too short to keep giving chances to people who don't respect you. For anyone else dealing with similar situations, know that it's okay to prioritize your own well-being. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away, even if it's from family.